There we go. Super. Thank you. We're so happy to see all of you. Thanks for joining us. This is our Women's Wellbeing Mastermind, and Del and I had such a wonderful experience a couple months ago. When COVID first started, we felt very compelled to create a space for us to share our experience and talk about this inside-out understanding that both Del and I share. So just a couple little housekeeping things. I believe you're all on mute, and it would be super just in case there's background noises. And if there's something that you would like to contribute, there's a raise hand button. You can just go to the participants at the bottom. You'll see participants. You just click on it, and there's a way to raise your hand. There's also a space where you can put in a question or a comment. And also, if this continues as a smaller group, we'll ask you to unmute, and we can have a conversation if there's something that comes to mind that you'd like to share or a question that you have. So we're super grateful that you're with us, and both Del and I feel very grateful. We were actually just talking before this call that we've come across this understanding. It's been a complete game changer for me. And we were both saying, with all of the experiences in life, which we can't run away from because life happens, seeing that the world, that we're not being attacked by the world, and being able to see the world through fresh eyes and having this understanding has completely shifted not only our state of mind, but it's completely shifted how we both show up in the world. In that, when life happens around us, which it does, I know I can speak for both of us, that we no longer feel like we're victimized by it. Del, I don't know if you wanted to share a little bit about how you sort of fell into this.
Yeah, we're both going to share a little bit about that. So basically, very long story short, I had a chaotic childhood, and I definitely grew up, I was abusive, and there was trauma, and there was abandonment, and all of those things. And I felt very defective, damaged, and so I spent my life on a path, on a spiritual path and on a psychological path, trying to fix myself. I came to America when I was 21, and I found it was just such an amazing time in the early 80s where everything spiritual was happening, all these amazing workshops, and found myself getting involved in that very quickly. And then when I was in my late 20s, I started into therapy, and I spent almost 30 years in therapy, again, trying to fix myself. And I was diagnosed with codependency and post-traumatic stress disorder from my childhood. And I'll always say that therapy helped me. I won't say it didn't help me. It definitely took me from not functioning at all to functioning pretty well. But I didn't find that relief that I really was looking for until I came across the principles. And there was just, and again, I have a master's in spiritual psychology. I'd studied all the different spiritual practices. Oh my God, I've been in everything from Kabbalah to Hinduism to Native American studies to everything. So I knew it all here. I knew that we are all equal, and we're all, God is within us and all these things, but it was all still up here. It never, ever really started to land. And I was very aware that other people seemed to get it, and I still was struggling. And then when I came across the principles, it was like somebody literally like put the light switch on, and I was like, oh, okay, now I see it. Now I get it. And what I wanted to share was one of the areas where it will certainly help me in my relationships. I mean, I was attracting narcissistic relationships. I was, repeating the patterns of my past growing up. Certainly, it absolutely helped me let go of that behavior. But what I really saw was when I went through the death of my mother, my sister, and my sister-in-law in a very, very short period of time. And it not just impacted us on the emotional level, but it upset my family had a family business, and it upset all of that. And it felt such an outside in situation. And I was really deeply into the principles at the time, or getting really deeply into them. And I was like, no, you know, Andrea and I were saying earlier, there are times when we're like, yeah, but this doesn't apply here. This doesn't apply here. And it felt like it was really coming from the inside out. And I will always say that, you know, we are impacted by our lives. It's not, you know, some people say it's all an illusion. I don't say that. I say life can push up against us sometimes, but the ultimate freedom is how we respond to it. And with the understanding of the principles, it gave me an ability to see things in such a different way. And I mean, people would say to me, are you numb? Is there something wrong with you? You've just lost 3 family members in the space of 8 months. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I'm genuinely okay. And I felt everything. I felt every emotion you could possibly feel in that situation. But I had an understanding that I could navigate that period of my life with an ease and a grace that I know I wouldn't have been able to prior to that. So that's just a little bit about, you know, my background, how I came across the principles, and there's a ton more, which we'll get into later. But Andrea's going to share a little bit about herself and how she was impacted by it as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Del. And yeah, it's one thing that I just wanted to piggyback on was that, you know, we are in the game, you know, so as much as we have this understanding of the illusory nature of our experience, we're still in the game and we're here to play that. So I feel as though having this understanding makes it so much easier, because it's, you know, I liken it to you're driving a car. If your check engine light goes on, if we don't have this understanding, we're honking at the guy next to us saying, you know, check your engine. But we know to check our own engine now. And that way we can navigate through this game with so much more ease and grace. And you know, for me, my experience was I was convinced that happiness was in things in my life. And I just sort of had a little checklist for myself of all these things that I knew in my adulthood would bring me happiness. And I ended up attaining them. And they were literally things. It was like, I wanted a certain car. I wanted, you know, to build a house. I wanted, you know, these silly little things that at the time looked like that was the goal. And by the time I was in my early 30s, I had attained those things. And I remember I was sitting in my in my great room in my beautiful custom built house, and I had created these things on my, I mean, at the time I was married, but the goals that I had, I wasn't expecting somebody else to do them for me. I was more than happy to go out and earn my keep. So I did that, and I was sitting, you know, in the house with the beautiful custom curtains and, you know, everything you can imagine, and with tears pouring down my face, saying like, where is it? I can remember I was on the phone with my girlfriend Kim, saying, you know, why aren't I happy? Why aren't I happy? I have all these things that the world tells us brings us happiness. I mean, look at any billboard. You know, you look at a billboard, there's a beautiful couple, they got a little glass of wine, they're in a big, beautiful home, and you're like, oh, that's it, right? Because it looks that way if we are paying attention to what we're being fed, right? And somebody gave me a book called Many Lives, Many Masters, which some of you may know that book. It was written by Brian Weiss, and it's about reincarnation. But for me, it wasn't so much about reincarnation. It was about the message. And the message in the book was that we are here to love, that love is our essence. That's our truth. And that rang so true to me. It was like I could feel that yes. Do you know what I mean? Like I could just feel that yes so deeply. And that's when my life really started to shift, and I started to look more deeply into like, why am I here? What's going on? You know, what's this presence that I feel when I get quiet, you know? And it was really fantastic that I started to look in the direction, like Del, I did not see the principles at that time, but I was diving into A Course in Miracles. I worked with Robert Holden. I did a lot of spiritual studies. I followed Wayne Dyer. You know, I sort of traveled all over, whoever was, you know, it was like candy, whatever I was in the mood for at the time. But I was getting a deeper understanding of what's true was that I am not this body, right? That I'm having an experience in this body. This is my vehicle. I saw that very, very clearly. And I also started to see that life wasn't happening to me, that it was happening for me. So I felt very strongly that when something big happened, that I was there to learn something about it. So that's really where my mind was. It was like, okay, this happened and this really sucks, but I'm going to learn something from this. And it was a good thing that I was in that space, because the world said, oh girl, you want to learn? Well, I'm going to throw it to you. So, you know, I went through many experiences where I had a ton and then I lost everything. And then I was in this relationship that I thought was amazing. And then it really wasn't, because there was all sorts of crazy going on that I didn't know about. So, you know, probably a lot of things that many of us have been through on some sort of level of betrayal and having a lot and losing a lot, you know, the whole 9 yards. And so I was grateful that I was able to see on a deeper level that I wasn't just this avatar having this experience, that there was so much more to me. And that I was okay. You know, I was able to see that I was resilient through these things, but I have shared with Del before, there was this, even though I was able to see my own resilience, to know that I was okay, to know that there was something greater than just this body. I still had this belief that I had like a cord needed to be cut. You know, I had this belief that I had a block. You know, there was a block and I got to get rid of the block. And that was my whole thing. There's a block. I got to fix the block. Is there a shaman that can get rid of the block? You know? And once I was introduced to these principles, I was like, there's no block and I'm okay. No matter what's happening around me, I'm still okay. And that impacted me so deeply. I finally felt like I could relax, because I was very much like Del, where I was studying, you know, I got certified in hypnosis, past life regression, NLP, you know, EFT, you name it. I had a little paper, you know. But once I saw this, the illusion of me having to fix myself or get rid of this block or change something on the outside in order for me to be okay, it just began to fade away. And the more I look in this direction, those illusions still pop up, because I still live in the real world of form and I still experience life the same way we all do. However, I catch them really, really quick. And what's happened over time is that the illusions that used to look so real to me, they're just not there. So life's still happening. And when something pops up where I get in my own way, I just see it so much more quickly, that I'm okay, you know, and that not only am I okay, but the answer is within me. It's not in the outside. And that's been the most impactful teaching, I guess, in the understanding of the principles for me. It was that it is not outside of me. Nothing that I want is outside of me. No answers that I'm looking for are outside of me. Now, I may be guided to speak to someone who's not, you know, who's outside of me, but the answer is always within. And that has just been, to me, such a relief. It's such a relief to know I don't have to go anywhere or do anything, that I'll know, you know. And again, I just wanted to say one caveat to that. When I first learned these principles, I was under the illusion that I didn't have to do anything. Now, what that means really is that, yes, we still do things in the world of form, but internally, I naturally bounce back. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to get frustrated over my frustration. I don't have to get frustrated over sadness. I don't have to get frustrated that I experience anxiety. I don't have to do anything about that, because it will flow through me when I let it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love that. And I, excuse me, it's so funny when you said that you were, you know, when you first came across them, you had this illusion that you do nothing.
Yeah, I did for like a year.
And the one for me, my like misunderstanding when I first came across the principles was that, you know, because everybody would describe to you, well, you know, humans, you know, that little 4% of us that are the expression of the spiritual nature that we are made of. That's who we are at our essence. I use my little snow globe again. That's who we are at our essence, that beautiful, I have a Buddha in mind that helps me remember who I am at my essence. My beautiful spiritual essence is 96% of me. And that little 4% is my humanness. And what happens is humans have really, really busy minds. We have, all these hundreds of thousands of thoughts that just keep flowing through us. And for some reason, I heard that it was really bad to have a busy mind. So when I would notice my busy mind, I think, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. My mind doesn't slow down. And then later and then I also thought, I'm only supposed to have good thoughts. That when I've got this, I'll only experience good thoughts or my life will get better. And it certainly got better, hugely better, but it got better because I stopped trying to control my thinking. I stopped judging it. If I had a busy mind, I had a busy mind. But what I would do before the principles is I'd get stuck up in there and try and control it, or say, oh God, these thoughts are here again. They must be true. They're telling me something about myself. And what this understanding helped me see is like, that's just what humans do. We have busy minds. We have crazy thoughts. They mean nothing about us. Some of them are a little bit on a habitual loop because they've been around so long. They know where they've got a little hook in there and they like to come home. But the more that we don't take them seriously and don't go in there and, as Andrea said, try and push the experience along faster than it wants to, it'll move on in its own accord and our resilience will naturally bounce back up. So that was a huge misunderstanding I had. But the thing that I think the most important thing, that especially when we're talking about tapping into that infinite potential, is that I, like many people, used to spend a lot of time up here thinking I had to figure things out, find the answer to the problem that I had created. And it was this little sort of loop that kept going. And when I realized that, and really, really, as I say, when I heard it from here in my, I call it my gut, my solar plexus, whatever it was, such a different feeling than up here. This has a really tinny, rat and a hamster, like a hamster wheel thing going on. And this is like just such a deep, beautiful, loving, peaceful feeling. When I started realizing that I could either spend time up here, or I could just, like, as Andrea said, just take your hands off the wheel and just drop into that space and allow that wisdom, we call it mind, God, spirit, intelligence behind life, whatever you want to describe it. When I let that guide me, it just feels so different. I don't need to know where we're going. I don't need to know the answers. I'm so in the present moment. When I'm up here, planning and strategizing, I want to know where I'm going, what the plan is, give me the map. Yeah. But when I drop into this place, it's like I'm sitting in the back of a limo and I just know it's going in the right direction wherever it's going. And I'm just going to enjoy myself. I'm going to enjoy the ride, have a glass of champagne and let God do it. Or wisdom or spirit, whatever you want to call it. So,
yeah, it's so freeing to know we can take our hands off the wheel. And again, it doesn't mean that you do nothing. I did make that mistake for about a year, but it just means that you listen and you pay attention and you allow that guidance to live through you. You know, this energy is living us. And it's so beautiful because the more we pay attention to that, things work out just without that struggle. You know, it's not that life is suddenly like, oh my goodness, everything's amazing. Look at me. I'm a Disney character. You know, it's that life still happens with a tremendous amount less of struggle, you know, and is no struggle possible? Is it on the table? It's on the table. You know, it is on the table. I don't know that, I can't tell you that I have not experienced any struggle since I've seen these principles, but I catch myself so quickly when I do, because I see the nature of what's true is that I am okay and everyone around me is okay. You know, tend to work a lot with families and at the moment teenagers. I don't know why that's happening, but it is at the moment. And the biggest thing that comes up is, asking the parents, do you believe your child has wisdom? And sometimes they say no. And that's always where the disconnect is. But I see so deeply that we all have wisdom. And I know that we're going to be okay. I know, Del, you know this. I'm dealing with, my parents are older, and, it's not, people get older and it's a role reversal. And there are so many times the personality me, my little avatar, wants to tell them how to do things, and which I would have done probably even up to 5-6 years ago. I would have wanted to have their situation be a certain way or try to figure it out. And what's been so beautiful is that, yes, they're getting older. Yes, there's lots of things that happen when people age. And yes, it's 100% my responsibility on a certain level, right? And the amount that it would have consumed me without this understanding would have been mind-boggling. It would have been my complete story. That would have been it. And I'm able to allow them to age in the way that they want to age and do the things that they want to do, and not try to convince them that my way is right or that they're wrong. Just know that their wisdom will guide them, and that's perfect. So that has taken so much pressure off of me. Again, it was pressure that I made up, but I still felt it, where I can allow them to be who they are, know that they're okay. And I think, that runs the gamut in all relationships, just to know that wherever we are, our partners are, our best friends are, our parents, our kids, that they're okay. And the more we stop trying to fix or change them, again, take our hands off the wheel, they'll figure it out. Their wisdom will come through, and they'll be able to see that the answers are already within them. That's the beauty of this understanding.
Yeah. I love that, and it's so true. I mean, my mum's passed away now, but yeah, with my children, I noticed that absolute, trusting that they do have their own wisdom guiding them. And I know growing up, my wisdom was telling me something. This isn't right. This doesn't feel right. And, innocently, my mother was doing the best she could, but she would say, no, you're wrong. That is okay. And if whether it was inappropriate touching or whatever it was, like that didn't happen or whatever. And I remember growing up thinking, I can't trust that voice inside me because it says something different to what my mother's saying. And I think that is something that not everybody by any means, but a lot of people grow up disconnected from, and that's when they live up here. It's because otherwise it's really confusing when you've got a voice coming from here and a voice coming from here. So you sort of go like that, and you just live from that place and denying what your body and what your intuition and what wisdom is telling you. And that is what's so beautiful about this understanding, is reconnecting with that. And this brings me on to one more thing too about forgiveness. And I even use the word forgiveness very lightly because, say in the past, if somebody, abused you or anything like that, I don't even judge it as anymore. What this understanding has helped me see is that whatever that person did at that time was a reflection of their level of consciousness and based on the thinking they had. And the concept of separate realities helped me let go of a lot of hurt and anger towards people, including my mother. But I was really able to see, oh my God, she was really doing her best. How can I judge that to forgive it? I can't even, you know what I mean? If I judge, the forgiveness is still coming out of it. She did something wrong. But when I truly saw that she just innocently, in her thinking, thought it was the right thing to do, I just let that go. And I'm at peace with it. I don't have to try and get inside the heads of people that did things that were hurtful. I don't have to begin to imagine what their thinking was. It's really, I just don't want to go there. It's like, why? I've got this beautiful big life over here, and I'm going to focus on this, not on trying to figure out somebody else's reality.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Del, that is so powerful, because how common is that we're hurt by someone and we become consumed by trying to figure out what was going on with them, what was in their mind, what was in their head, what were they thinking? And all that does is it keeps us in this prison. It keeps us in a prison, and that is so powerful. And I've seen so much of that recently. It's so interesting. I started going on walks early in the morning, and I'll catch myself in a story about whatever the heck I'm talking about in here today, you know? And I started to see, like, from another, I guess, like a different vision of it, like really catching myself making like this little cylinder of a life for myself. Like literally, I'm like, oh, look at this tiny little cylinder you've created in your mind, Andrea. Are you having fun with that? You know, and just popping out of it and being like, oh my goodness, wait, there's a whole world of possibilities that I can't even imagine in this little mind because it hasn't happened yet, you know, or it's not even a thought for me at the moment. And I'll catch myself in my little cylinder, and then I'll pop out of it and I'll see, oh my goodness, you know, that's just something that I'm ruminating on at the moment. And once I just stop ruminating on it and make space for something fresh and new, you know, again, I'm leaving it. It's not up to me. I'm letting life live through me. And that's really where the magic happens. I do want to ask one question. Is everyone here familiar? Does everyone here know what the principles are?
Oh,
okay. Okay.
Sorry.
So we're talking Swahili. Awesome.
Yeah.
Del, would you like to dive in and we can sort of share?
Well, I mean, the principles, I always say they're not they're not 1 less 4 agreement, and they're not, you know, 4 less of the 7 habits of highly successful people. It's not 3 rules to live by. It's just something that Sydney Banks saw. He was a welder in the 1970s, and he had this sort of epiphany or this enlightenment moment where he saw the system behind how our life is created, how our personal reality is created. And he said that comes through mind, thought, and consciousness. And I'm not going to get into, well, I will a little. Mind refers to either God, spirit, or I call it the intelligence behind life, because you can see it in nature all around you. You know, I mean, that to me is the most beautiful example of creation, is nature. Thought, I mean, thought is the creative energy that is rushing through us every minute of every day. And with our consciousness, we latch on to certain thoughts and we create our reality from that. So instead of what he pointed to, he said it was the inside out nature of life as opposed to the outside in. The way I grew up, especially when my mum used to say, "You're driving me crazy," I used to think that we could do things to each other, that everything I felt was coming directly from you. I was feeling you, or I was feeling my circumstances or my environment. And what Sid points to is it's what we think of the people in our lives and what we think of our environment. And we are feeling our thinking every second of every thought we feel constantly. So that's when they talk about the illusion of it, is that thoughts come and go. So that's why it's ever changing. It's never solid. It's never real. That's the illusionary nature. And so, mind, thought, and consciousness. The consciousness is our level of being able to see things. And consciousness sometimes is described as levels of consciousness, like it's steps. I love to see it as it's almost like a lens. It's sort of, sometimes you can look at something so tightly, you only see a tiny, tiny bit. Sometimes that lens just opens up a bit and you're like, whoa. And the picture gets a little clearer and a little bigger. And then the more it opens up again, it's like, wow, this whole whole, you know, that's the spiritual realm to me, this whole world, this whole thing that's going on. But when we're stuck in our little personal minds and our personal thinking, our little thing contracts again, and we're looking at that little pinhole, and we think that that's the whole picture. So that to me is how consciousness works. And usually once consciousness is sort of expanded, it never, I mean, maybe we get, something will happen, we're so impacted that we might constrict a little bit. But usually as our consciousness grows, it stays somewhat open. It goes like that a little bit because our moods, that's natural for our moods to go up and down. That's just part of being a human being. Some days you feel a little better for no reason, and other days you feel a little lower. So that's my basic definition of the principles. But it's really what we're pointing to that is the most important thing. It's not about understanding it from an intellectual place. It's really looking for that feeling. Sid kept saying, look for the feeling. And the feeling is pure love. And Sharon and I were just on a call the other day and with Mavis Khan, and she says it so beautifully. And it's like anything other than love is just, you know, thinking, our human thinking. That who we really are at our essence is love. And when we're in that presence with ourselves and with others, all this other stuff just starts to dissolve away. So that's, what do you have to add to that, Andrea?
I second that, Del. That was lovely and perfect. And the only thing that I would want to add is just expanding on what you've said, is that it's not an intellectual understanding. So you don't have to get caught up in, oh, what does mine mean? What does this mean? Because that's completely irrelevant. Well, I don't want to say it's irrelevant. It's nice to understand what the heck we're talking about. However,
now forget it.
Right, exactly. And truly, that's where people get very, very caught up, because we want to understand, we want to do the principles, and guess what? We don't do them. It's happening. It's just happening. It's how we show up in the world. It's how we function. It's how we see the world. But it's so incredibly impactful to understand that this is how we work, that we are not being attacked by the world, that we are feeling our thinking. So we're not experiencing the world. We're experiencing our thinking about the world, and our thinking is going to look different based on what kind of mood we're in, where our consciousness is at the moment. So for me, it takes all the pressure off of having to change people, having to change situations, having to have the world be different in order for me to be happy. Now, that doesn't mean that I allow situations that I don't like or that I don't agree with. It just means I'm not subject to the discomfort of them, right? That I see, oh, wait, it's not this person, it's my thinking about this person. And for me, it just puts like this little wall in between, so I'm not so attached to how I feel. I can see that will shift and change, because thought is like the weather. It comes and it goes. And the more I look in that direction, even my yucky thinking, it just isn't scary anymore, because I know the transitory, illusory nature of it. So even, I just keep bringing up my parents, because we're going through, the aging process. And, there are moments when I get teary-eyed, and I know that those moments, they're okay. I don't have to be afraid of them. And I'll also get real clear, real quick, that it's okay. So the other thing I just wanted to mention was that, Sydney Banks didn't discover something that, has not ever been seen before. This is the wisdom of the ages. And if you go into any spiritual text, at the crux of it, you will see this. You will see that we're experiencing a world of thought. But what he did that was so magnificent is he articulated it in a way that we have a better understanding of the simplicity of our human experience. We complicate things, but there's such a simplicity to our experience. And the more that we just look in that direction of what's true, that we're experiencing thought in the moment, it looks different all the time. And it looks different for, you know, our thoughts, it's like fingerprints. Everybody has a different fingerprint. We see the world. Del was talking about separate realities. We see the world through a very separate reality than anyone else on the planet. Knowing that, it again, it takes the pressure off of having to judge someone else or be disturbed by someone else, because their thinking looks as real to them as my thinking looks to me. So for me, you know, what Sid did was he just brought it into a simplistic form so that we can easily not only understand it, right? Because again, we don't want to get too much into this, because this is where we just put more stuff in our mind and things get more complicated, and then we're trying to do. But just bring it here, just like you were saying about your conversation with Mavis, about just bring it back to our essence, which is already happy, already perfect, already joyful, and just love. And the more time we sit in that space, the other stuff that we have to, you know, that we agreed to deal with in life on this journey, it's just not so heavy. I feel like that's what I want to convey, that heaviness. We don't experience that heaviness as often, I would say.
Yeah. I love what you shared, and it's so true. It's, you know, I look at my mother for the first part of my life, and certainly as she got older, she died at 91. She definitely didn't change, and if anything, she got a little more cantankerous as time went on. But I knew that I ultimately was experiencing my thinking about her, and as my thinking softened and changed, my reactions suffered and changed. And that's what you're pointing to, that freedom, when we know they're not making us feel a certain way. It's how I'm experiencing them, how I'm thinking of them, that I get to experience. I also wanted to share that my son calls the three principles Buddhism for dummies, because he, and it's so true, because as Andrea said, it is the wisdom of the ages. We've heard it all before. And as I said, I've been studying it for almost 40 years. Well, hang on, not almost 40 years, but well, at least over 30 years before coming across the principles. And I just heard it in a different way. It landed in a different way. And I think for me too, it wasn't separating out spirituality and psychology, because I still love psychology. I love to figure out how humans create their you know, thinking, their experiences, and the patterns in that, and the neural pathways and brain chemistry, and that fascinates me. But what I love about the principles is that it brings the two together. And this understanding is so simple. Number one, you just, you know, as Andrea said, it's a description, not a prescription. So it's not telling you how to live, it's just describing what's going on. And then you, in turn, when that clarity is there of, oh, this is how it's happening, you then start to experience it. And that's what Andrea was also saying, is when we get up here and trying to figure it out, it's that's, I'm going to use my little snow globe again, that's the personal thinking, that brain that's really fabulous, but it's just like a computer. But when we try and figure things out from that perspective, it just gets cloudy and we can't see. There's no clarity there. But when we just drop into that place inside of ourselves, that place is, as Andrea was saying, that peace, love, happiness, that place, the more that we feel that, believe it or not, the more common sense we experience. And the common sense is wisdom coming through us. So there's no need, you know, to, if you start saying, well, I don't get this and I don't get that, just know that the more you settle into that beautiful space, that you'll get what we call insights, and you'll go, oh my God, oh wow, I see that. Oh my God, I see this. But you get it from an insight that's coming from that beautiful place inside, not by trying to figure anything out. And does anybody have any questions? I think we've...
Thank you. Yes, agreed.
I open it up to questions here.
Okay, I was just checking to see if there were any raised hands. But yeah, if you guys want to chime in, please.
Karen just unmuted.
I forgot about raising my hand.
Oh, that's okay.
We were supposed to have 17. This is you can just raise your hand that way.
So the name of this course was Mastermind for Women only.
Women's Wellbeing Mastermind. The Women's Wellbeing Mastermind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this part of another program or is this a new?
Well, Andrea and I did it back in the spring, and we had an amazing time with the most beautiful group of women. Some in fact who are coming back again. They're not on this call, but they loved it so much. So we're going to be doing it again on September 23rd, I think.
Yes.
23rd. It's an 8-week course, and if you're interested, if you sign up before September.
I think it's the 14th. I'll double check, but I think you've got a week, at least a week.
There's an early bird special of $197.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. I keep looking at Andrea. She's got all the information in the head more. But yeah, we just each week we just dive deeper into. We choose a subject and talk about it, and love to have people join in and share. But we deal with everything from the inside out nature of life, resilience, living from wisdom, becoming comfortable with the unknown, not
relationships.
Relationships.
Health. Yeah.
Health, habits.
Yes, habits are big. Yeah.
And what else was it? Separate reality. We just go deeper into some of the stuff we've touched on today. But I think that was pretty much it. But it was such a beautiful, and some of the people that did it before said, well, is it going to be the same? And we're like, nothing's the same. There will be new stuff constantly coming up for us to share, and for you and whoever is part of the program to share as well. We just really had a beautiful, intimate journey together. It's wonderful.
I get another question if no one else does. How did you, both of you, start coming out as offering what you teach? How did you, so you learned of the understanding and then you started offering classes, or how did you?
I think both Andrea and I were coaching before we came across the understanding. So we were already doing that and offering things that way. And then when we came across, we it was like, as we both said, we were searching and searching, and this was like the searching's ended. This is it.
Yeah, there's nowhere else to look.
Yeah, exactly. So we just sort of incorporated it into what we were already doing.
Yes.
I actually offered the money back to some people I was in the midst of working with. And I was like, oh, sorry, I'm changing directions here. You might not like it, or let me give you a free session. Does this make sense to you? Otherwise, I'll give you your money back. And they were like, oh no, this makes sense. Yeah. So I didn't have to give any money back.
Yeah, because you no longer have to strategize. Oh, let's strategize this. There's no longer separate problems that you need to strategize. The answer for everything is the same. And the more you look in this direction, that just becomes clear. And I know both for Del and I, like she said, we both had practices before where, we were still coaching, in the spirit of self-development. Mm-hmm. And when we saw this, it created such an ease. I'm going to speak for both of us, that we just shifted our direction. And again, I'm going to say for both of us that it wasn't such a giant shift, because we were looking in the direction, but there was just that missing piece, and it's a huge missing piece. It's a huge missing piece. Yeah. However, we were both in the direction. So as far as how we both created our practices around this, again, it was just introducing, hey, guess what I see today? And this is so impactful. I'm going to keep looking at in this direction. So that's how it happened. We both were already doing this, so we just shifted to sharing what we see. Mm-hmm. Was that clear? I hope it was clear. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Does anybody else have any questions?
Questions?
No? Well, what I've found in sharing this with clients is that a lot of times I will get a pushback because there's always a but, you know. Okay, I see it there, but, you know, or yes, that makes sense here, but here's an exception. And I felt that way for a long time about big topic, my parents. You know, that was the exception, was wait, everything is thought except my parents, because I had so much tied to it. And when we have these buts, right, they look so real and they feel real because we feel our thinking. We're living in the feeling of thought in the moment 100% of the time. So not only do we think there's a but we feel that but. And that's something that you may experience the deeper that you look in this direction, that you'll have your exceptions. Mm-hmm. And the more we just continue to look, you know, I say to my clients, like, we're on a tour together and I'm your tour guide and I'm just going to hold your hand and we're going to explore and let's look at this together. You know, I feel like, you know, I'm like a little cheerleader, like, hey, look over here. What's going on over here? You know, and the more we explore together, because I never want to tell somebody, hey, this is how it is and you better believe me. It's like, no, well, this is what I'm seeing. And how does that look to you? And then we just sort of fall into that conversation and see where it leads. And I can't say that it happens right away. It doesn't always happen right away. And there's still, you know, people that want to fight me on it, and that's okay. Even the buts are still made of thought. Even the buts, even the exceptions, they're still happening through this same channel. Again, it's a description of how we function. It's not a prescription of how to live your life. It's, oh, this is how I live my life. Mm-hmm. So you will find in looking in this deeper that things will come up that you'll be like, I don't believe you're right there. But what's so much fun, and this is why I think Del and I love this conversation so much, and both the two of us are always deepening our understanding and, you know, working with our mentors and such. Because it's always true. It's always, always true 100% of the time. So the buts are kind of fun to explore at a certain level, even though they might be frustrating, because this is always true. We live in the feeling of thought in the moment, and thought comes and goes, and it only has the meaning that we give it. And I know, like I tell you, when I go on my walk, sometimes I find myself in my little cylinder, you know, it's like a little cylinder of a world. And I'm like, oh, there you go again, girl. There you go again, creating this little prison that doesn't exist. But habitually, I've been creating it for so long that it looks and feels very real to me. But I know that's a game. I know the truth. And the reason I know the truth is because I can feel it. I think that for both Del and I, that's what was so compelling, was when we saw this, when we started to explore this understanding, it's like I could just feel the truth in it. Mm-hmm. And that's really where we're going. It's just feeling what's true in life so that we can live more in the energy of life, in the flow of life, and not feel as though we're up against life, but we're in that magic of life.
Yeah. I think also what I think is so important, especially given what the climate we're living in right now, is to really acknowledge that we are, as much as we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we do live in the world of form. There is a world of form. There is physicality to this world. And I was listening to Mara and Eric talking recently and about, you know, they work with gangs in Chicago. And Eric said, yeah, you know, life does impact us. It can batter and bruise us. I mean, I won't say we're not impacted by it. What I will say is what I make out of that impact is entirely up to me. You know, it's like Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps. He was in the concentration camp, but he was not going to give up his ultimate freedom, which was his peace of mind. He was going to find that in the worst of circumstances. And I remember when my mother passed away, I think Linda Pransky was like, she was like, oh, you seem in a low mood. And I was like, no shit, Sherlock. You know, my mum's just passed away. And but then I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, that was one of my yearbutts. This is the third death in 8 months. I'm feeling it. And then I looked, and I'm one of 7 children, and I looked at my brothers and sisters, and I saw that each one of us reacted entirely differently to the same life event. And that just showed me right there that it isn't the life event, it is what we make of it. The range was from indifference to how can I live without her? That's how far the range went. And the same with, I live in Malibu, and we, most of Malibu was on where I live anyway. There was almost 1,000 homes lost in my immediate vicinity. The fire came within 10 feet of my house. I wasn't here, obviously, I'd evacuated. But I helped out in a disaster center for 2 months after that event. We had a little room in the back where I would sit and help people we would giving clothes away and everything like that. But part of it was just sitting there if people wanted to share. And I was amazed at how many people that hadn't lost anything were suffering more than the people who'd lost everything. And it was like, oh my God. And it was just amazing to me. I thought, and I continue to see that it really is our ultimate free will is how we respond to life, the life of the form that we're living in.
Yeah, and knowing that we don't have to change how we respond, but understanding where that's coming from, that it's not the situation, and that how we respond is up to us. And I think the more that we look at this truth, that we acknowledge this truth in our life, our response automatically lightens. That's what I've found for myself, at least. And I still do this, because life's a roller coaster, and I'm on the roller coaster. But that's it. I'm on the roller coaster. I'm not in it. There's a difference,
I like Michael Neal's analogy. It's the roller coaster on the river. The river is wisdom, God, mind, whatever, spirit taking us on this river, and we're on this roller coaster, like thinking that that's our whole experience, is just that roller coaster. But we are being held, we are safe, and we are being, as Andrea said, being lived through. And the more that we can relax and know that it's all just an exciting ride, and regardless of what happens, we're safe and we're taken care of. So.
Pretty cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's awesome. Yeah. Do you have any more questions? No? Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And we'll send you a little follow-up if you feel like joining us. It's September 24th. And we'll also send the recording if you like what you heard and you want to listen again. So you'll have that. And have a lovely, delicious, beautiful day. Thank you.
Yes. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful day.